What happens when a bank tries to ruin your life over a house that's literally falling apart? A young couple in 1973 was about to find out. They had saved up just enough to build their dream home, a small ranch house in the country. But their dream was about to become a nightmare, orchestrated by a crooked builder and a bank that didn't care. They were bullied, lied to, and pushed to the absolute brink. They were about to lose everything. But their lawyer found one tiny detail in the paperwork that was about to give them all the power. It all started with such promise. The year was 1973. A young couple, our storyteller's parents, had finally scraped together enough money for a down payment. The local bank approved their mortgage, and they signed a contract with a builder named Bob to construct a modest home. This was it, the beginning of their lives. But Bob was a problem. He was overbooked, taking on jobs all over town and leaving the actual work to a crew of clueless minions. The build started to drag on. And on. The mistakes weren't small things, like the wrong color paint or a crooked piece of trim. We are talking about catastrophic failures of basic construction. The architect had apparently forgotten to erase a line on the blueprints. So the framers, without a single question, built a wall straight through the bathtub. In the kitchen, the cabinets were barely hanging on. When the mother asked about them, she was told, "Don't put anything heavy in there." Why? Because they'd been attached to the dry wall with a few roofing nails. Not the studs. The dry wall. And the garage door? The one that's supposed to face the driveway so you can, park your car? It was framed into the living room wall. The day of the final inspection arrived. The bank's representative showed up, clipboard in hand, ready to get the final sign-off. The couple met him in the front yard. They told him, point blank, there was no way they were signing off on this disaster. The representative got angry. The bank had already paid Bob a lot of money, and he wasn't about to let this young couple hold things up. He strode confidently to the front door to inspect the property himself. He grabbed the doorknob, gave it a firm pull, and the entire door, casing and all, fell right on top of him. It had just been wedged into the opening. Not nailed, not secured. Just wedged. The bank, now furious, called Bob. He finally showed up to supervise the work himself, but it turned out Bob was no better at building a house than his crew was. The problems continued. The couple stood their ground, refusing to sign off on a home that was a danger to their family. And this is where the pressure campaign began. The mother was at home, trying to raise two tiny children in a nasty little rental. The father was working 2 jobs just to keep them afloat. Throughout this entire ordeal, the bank and Bob treated them like dirt. They bullied the mother when she was alone. They lied to the father when he called. What should have been the most exciting time in their lives was an absolute living hell. The mother cried constantly. The father sank into a depression. Finally, the threats came. The bank threatened to foreclose on the half-built, broken house. Bob threatened to sue them for breach of contract because the bank was refusing to give him his final payment. The couple was exhausted, terrified, and felt completely trapped. They had spent their life savings on this. If this turned into a long, expensive court battle, they knew the bank and the builder would crush them. They would lose everything. With nowhere else to turn, they found an attorney. Let's call him Tom. They sat in his office, laying out the entire sorry mess, the plumbing nightmares, the electrical issues, the wall in the bathtub. They were scared. The father said he could see it on Tom's face as he sorted through the mountain of paperwork. The grim expressions, the slight shake of his head. He knew they were doomed. Then, something changed. Tom stopped sorting. He looked at one of the documents. And a slow smile spread across his face. He looked up at the terrified couple and said, "Let's get everyone together for a meeting. Tomorrow." So there they were, the next day, all gathered at the bank. The young couple, their lawyer Tom, the bank's representative, the bank's high-powered attorney, Bob the builder, and Bob's own attorney. The air was thick with tension. The bank and Bob were there to deliver the final blow. But what happened next is the part one still can't believe. Before anyone else could even speak, Tom stood up. He looked around the room, making eye contact with every single person who had made his clients' lives miserable. And he said, calmly, "Well, my clients have decided they no longer want this house. Please remove it." A stunned silence fell over the room, followed by laughter. The bank's lawyer scoffed. "Remove it? Have you lost your mind?" That's when Tom, with a grand, theatrical gesture, placed a single piece of paper on the center of the table. A deed. My clients, Tom announced, his voice booming in the quiet room, own the land the house is sitting on. Outright. They paid for it in cash. They no longer want your house on their land. Get the house off my client's land. You could have heard a pin drop. Bob's attorney snatched the deed, his eyes scanning it frantically. His face went pale. He turned to Bob, his voice a choked whisper. You built a house on land you don't own? Bob just nodded, looking like a ghost. Then the bank's attorney started screaming at the bank's representative. You didn't finance the land the house is on? The representative, stammering, could only get out, no. The bank had made a fatal error. In their haste and arrogance, they had only financed the construction of the house itself. The loan, the mortgage, was for the structure. The parents had used their savings to buy the plot of land separately, before any of this started. They owned the most valuable part of the equation free and clear. Tom stood firm, his voice like steel. As I said, gentlemen, you are trespassing on my client's land. I expect the house to be removed and the land returned to its original state. At once. The father said he will never forget the blank, horrified looks that passed between everyone on the other side of the table. Their entire case had just evaporated. Sure, the bank could foreclose on a house that now had to be torn down. A house sitting on land they had no claim to. They had no way to recoup their money. Bob was even worse off. He was out the 50% he'd already paid out of pocket for materials, and now he was on the hook for demolishing and removing the entire structure. On top of that, the bank would undoubtedly sue him to get back the money they'd already given him. He was ruined. Suddenly, the tone in the room changed. Suddenly, the young couple were wonderful people. It was all just a terrible misunderstanding. The bank and Bob couldn't do enough for them. The house was immediately brought up to spec, perfectly in line with the original blueprints. Every single mistake was fixed. Every shortcut was undone. It was done right, it was done fast, and it was done at considerable extra cost to Bob. The couple finally signed the mortgage papers. Bob got the rest of his money, just about breaking even. The bank's representative was fired. And Tom, the attorney, got the story of a lifetime, a tale of triumph he could tell for the rest of his career. This story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, the powerful overplay their hand. The bank and the builder were so sure they could bully this young family into submission that they overlooked the one detail that mattered most. It wasn't just about a contract, it was about a clever lawyer who found the single thread that could unravel their entire scheme. But let me ask you this. Was the lawyer's demand to remove the house a brilliant strategic move to force their hand, or was it an incredibly risky bluff that could have backfired? Let me know in the comments if you think it was genius or just plain reckless.